By the time I was 12, I had already learned how to disappear in a room full of people. Not literally, just enough that no one noticed when I spoke, when I tried, when I existed. The family gatherings, my presence blended into the background like the hum of an air conditioner, constant, unnoticed, irrelevant. My sister Claire was the opposite. Claire didn't walk into a room, she arrived. Conversations bent toward her like gravity had shifted. Compliments followed her the way perfume follows a woman who knows exactly who she is. Teachers adored her. Relatives praised her. Strangers remembered her name after hearing it once. And me? I was the other one, Claire's brother, they said. Still shy. So quiet, that one. No one ever asked what I wanted to be. No one asked what I was good at. When I did answer, it felt like my words floated halfway across the room before dissolving into nothing. At Sunday dinners, Claire sat beside my mother, laughing, recounting stories about her internship, her grades, her plans. My mom listened like each sentence was gold dust. I sat near the end of the table, passing salt, refilling water, nodding politely. My father wasn't cruel. That would have been easier to name. He was simply absent. Present in body, missing in attention. Claire needed help, he leaned in. If I spoke, he glanced at his phone. I told myself it didn't matter. That attention was overrated. That silence was safer. But silence has weight. And over time, it presses in. In high school, Claire became everything people expected her to be. Cheer captain, honor roll, student council, the kind of girl teachers pointed to when they wanted to inspire others. I became invisible with excellent grades. I discovered early that I was good with patterns, numbers, systems, connections people didn't notice. While others memorized, I understood. While others spoke loudly, I listened. I won competitions no one came to watch. When acceptance letters arrived, Claire's came first. A top private university. The house exploded with celebration. Balloons, cake, photos, phone calls to relatives. When mine arrived a week later, full scholarship, state school, my mom smiled, hugged me, and said, "That's nice, honey." That was the phrase that followed me for years. That's nice. College widened the gap. Claire's life became a highlight reel. Internships at companies people recognized. Photos in tailored outfits. Trips. Dinners. Her name dropped casually in conversations like it meant something on its own. I worked 2 jobs. Studied at night. Ate ramen by choice, then by necessity, then by habit. I didn't complain. Complaints require an audience. After graduation, Claire moved to Manhattan. A marketing role at a fast-growing firm. Just temporary, she said, sipping champagne at a family dinner. Until something bigger opens up. Everyone laughed, impressed. I moved too. Same city. Different universe. My first apartment was a narrow walk-up in Queens, where the radiator screamed in winter and the ceiling leaked in spring. I liked it. No one expected anything from me there. Family calls became less frequent. When they did happen, they were updates about Claire. She's doing so well. She's being considered for a promotion. Her boss just loves her. They rarely asked about me. When they did, it was in passing, like checking the weather. "So, work's okay?" I always answered the same way. "Yeah, it's fine." What I didn't say was that I had started something. Quietly. Carefully. At night, after my shifts, after my classes, after everyone else was asleep. What I didn't say was that I had learned how to build things from nothing. Years passed like that. Claire climbed. I stayed off the radar. Family gatherings became fewer but louder. Celebrations, milestones, announcements. And me? I listened. I remembered everything. By the time my grandmother's birthday invitation arrived, a big one, family from everywhere, I almost didn't go. I already knew how it would play out. Claire would shine. I would fade. What I didn't know was that this time, the room would finally hear me. And once it did, nothing would ever sound the same again. The invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope, the kind that tried too hard to look important. Gold lettering. Heavy paper. My grandmother's 70th birthday. Private venue in Manhattan. Formal dress code. Claire called me the moment she got hers. "You're coming, right?" she asked, already assuming the answer. "Yeah," I said. "Good. Grandma would be sad if you weren't there." A pause. Then, lightly, "I'll be there early. I'm helping Mom with the seating." Of course she was. I hung up and stared at the envelope longer than necessary. Family events had a way of shrinking me, compressing me back into that quiet version of myself I'd spent years outgrowing in private. Till I RSVP'd yes. Some obligations aren't about choice. The night before the party, I stood in front of my closet longer than I ever had before. Not because I lacked options, but because the right one mattered. I finally chose a simple tailored suit. No logos. No flash. Clean lines. Understated. It felt honest. The venue sat just off Fifth Avenue, all glass and steel, glowing against the early evening dark. When I arrived, the valet looked at my car, then at me, then smiled with professional neutrality. "Evening, sir." Inside, the room buzzed with energy. Soft jazz. Crystal glasses. The low murmur of conversations overlapping like waves. Family members clustered in familiar formations, aunts near the bar, cousins near the windows. Claire was easy to find. She always was. She stood near the center, wearing a dress that caught the light like it was designed to be seen. Laughter surrounded her. Compliments followed. "You look amazing." "That color is perfect on you." "How's the job?" "Still killing it," she answered effortlessly, like she'd rehearsed this life. When she spotted me, her smile flickered just slightly before settling back into place. "You made it," she said, giving me a quick hug. "Nice suit. Thanks." She turned back to her group almost immediately. Conversation swallowed her again. I drifted toward the edge of the room, greeting relatives as they noticed me. Handshakes. Polite smiles. Surface-level questions. "So, what are you up to these days?" "Still in tech." "Living where again?" I answered calmly, vaguely. I had learned that specifics invited disbelief. "My mom found me near the window." "There you are," she said, adjusting her necklace. "Did you see Claire?" "Doesn't she look stunning?" "She does," I said. She squeezed my arm. "I'm glad you came." I knew she meant it. I also knew she didn't fully see me. Both things could be true. Dinner was announced. We moved to assigned tables. By coincidence, or planning, I was seated farther from the head table. Claire, of course, sat beside my grandmother, glowing under the soft lights. Speeches began. Stories from the past. Laughter. Nostalgia. Claire spoke beautifully when her turn came. About family. About love. About how Grandma inspired her. Applause filled the room. When my name was called, it took me a second to realize it. I hadn't expected it. I stood. The room quieted out of courtesy, not curiosity. I spoke simply. Thanked my grandmother. Shared a short memory. Nothing dramatic. Polite clapping followed. Then attention shifted back. As dessert was served, conversations resumed, louder now, looser. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter rose. I felt that familiar sensation again. The old one. Being present without being seen. Then my grandmother leaned toward me. "I hear you moved recently," she said warmly. "Where are you living now, sweetheart?" Her voice wasn't loud. But the timing was perfect. The table hushed just slightly. Enough. I met her eyes. Smiled. "Just a little penthouse overlooking Central Park." The words landed softly. And then, silence. A fork paused midair. Someone coughed. Claire's laughter cut off so abruptly it sounded like a breath stolen away. My uncle let out a low whistle. My mother stared at me like she was trying to place a face she'd known her whole life and just realized she didn't. Claire's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, liquid spilling across the white tablecloth. No one spoke. And for the first time in my life, I didn't fill the silence. I let it stretch. Silence is uncomfortable when it doesn't belong to anyone. At first, no one moved. The air felt thicker, like the room itself had leaned in. I could hear the faint clink of glass from another table, the hum of traffic outside, the distant piano note holding too long. Claire was the first to recover. She laughed, too quickly, too brightly. "Okay," she said, waving a hand, "very funny." I didn't laugh back. My grandmother tilted her head, studying my face the way she used to when I was a child lying badly about breaking something. "A penthouse?" she repeated gently. "Overlooking Central Park?" "Yes, Grandma." Not louder. Not defensive. Just steady. My mother finally found her voice. "You mean temporarily? Like you're subletting?" "No." That single word landed harder than the sentence before it. Across the table, my uncle leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed with interest rather than doubt. He'd always been the quiet observer in the family, the one who noticed what others missed. Claire dabbed at the tablecloth with a napkin, her movements sharp. "Since when do you live in a penthouse?" she asked, keeping her tone light but missing the mark. "Did you win the lottery or something?" I took a sip of water. "No." Another pause. Another ripple. My father cleared his throat. "What exactly do you do again?" There it was. Question that had never mattered enough to ask properly before. "I build companies," I said. That earned a few raised eyebrows. Someone chuckled, assuming I was exaggerating. I didn't correct them. My grandmother reached for my hand. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked around the table, at familiar faces suddenly unsure of where to place me. "You never asked." No accusation. Just a fact. The rest of the evening moved strangely, like a party after the music cuts out. Conversations restarted but kept circling back, orbiting me from a cautious distance. People watched when they thought I wasn't looking. Claire barely spoke. When the dinner ended, my uncle found me near the exit. "Central Park, huh?" he said quietly. "Which side?" "West." He smiled, slow and knowing. "Figures." That was all he said. But it felt like acknowledgement instead of curiosity. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. My phone buzzed as I stepped away from the crowd. A message from Claire. "You didn't have to embarrass me." I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "I didn't say anything about you." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "You know what I mean." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. For once, I didn't need to explain myself. The elevator ride up to my place was silent, smooth. When the doors opened, the city spread out beneath me, lights pulsing like a living thing. Central Park lay dark and vast, a quiet contrast to the noise below. I poured myself a drink and stood by the window. Success hadn't changed me. It had just revealed how small everyone's assumptions had been. What they didn't know, what none of them could imagine, was that the penthouse wasn't the achievement. It was the afterthought. The real story had started years earlier, in silence. And it wasn't finished yet. The morning after the party, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls. Messages. Names I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly eager to reconnect. Cousins. Aunts. Even people who used to forget my birthday. I ignored most of them. Attention, I'd learned, is loud but rarely sincere. One message did stand out. From my mother. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply right away. I made coffee, stood by the window, watched the city wake up. Runners traced the park paths below like moving stitches. For years, I'd imagined this view as proof of something. Now it just felt quiet. I called her back. Her voice was careful, like she was stepping onto unfamiliar ground. "Why didn't you tell us how well you were doing?" I leaned against the counter. Because it never felt relevant. A pause. Then softer, you're my son. It's relevant. I didn't argue. I just said I didn't want things to change. They already had. We both knew it. Later that day, Claire showed up at my building. The doorman called first. Your sister is here. I almost laughed at the phrasing. When she walked in, she looked different, less polished, more tense. Her confidence, so effortless the night before, felt strained now. So, this is real, she said, glancing around. You actually live here? Yes. She crossed her arms. How long? A while. How long is a while? Her voice sharpened. Long enough, she scoffed. You really enjoy this, don't you? Letting everyone think I'm the only successful one, then pulling the rug out from under me. That wasn't my intention. But you didn't stop it. I met her gaze. You didn't either. That landed. Her jaw tightened. You could have said something. At any point, she said. You made me look stupid. I didn't say a word about your life, Claire. I answered a question. She paced, heels clicking against the floor. So what, you're some kind of secret millionaire now? I shrugged. I don't like labels. She laughed, but it was hollow. Unbelievable. All this time, I thought I was carrying the family. I let that sit. You were carrying their attention. That's not the same thing. She stopped pacing. For a moment, she looked tired. Not angry. Just drained. I worked hard, she said quietly. I know, I replied. So did I. She looked out the window at the park, at the city she thought she'd conquered. Why didn't I know? Because you never looked. Silence again. Different this time. Heavier. Honest. When she left, she didn't slam the door. She didn't say goodbye either. That evening, my uncle called. Family's buzzing, he said. You stirred the pot. I didn't mean to. He chuckled. Yeah, you did. And it's fine. Truth has a way of making noise. Why are you calling? I asked. Another pause. Calculated. I've got a friend, he said. Old money. Real estate. He's curious about you. I looked back out at the park, the city that never stopped testing people. Tell him he can be curious. My uncle laughed. Careful. That's how doors open. I ended the call and poured another drink. They thought they'd uncovered a secret. They had no idea how deep it went. The first rule of quiet power is simple. Once people notice it, they start rewriting the past. Within days, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, I had always been smart. I had shown signs. Someone even claimed they knew I'd do something big. I let them talk. Claire, on the other hand, disappeared. No posts. No updates. No carefully curated glimpses of success. For the first time since we were kids, she went silent, and the silence didn't suit her. My uncle's friend turned out to be more than curious. We met in a private lounge overlooking the Hudson. He was older, sharp-eyed, dressed plainly in the way only truly wealthy people are. No sales pitch. No bravado. Just questions that cut straight to the bones of things. You don't advertise, he said. Why? Advertising attracts noise, I replied. Noise attracts problems. He smiled. Good answer. We talked for hours. About systems. About leverage. About how most people confuse growth with scale. When the meeting ended, he didn't offer a deal. He offered respect. That mattered more. Meanwhile, my mother started calling more often, asking about my day, about my work, trying, clumsily, to bridge a distance she hadn't realized she helped create. One evening, she said, You know, Claire's been struggling. I closed my laptop. Struggling how? She feels like everything she built doesn't matter anymore. I chose my words carefully. It matters. Just not the way she thought. My mother sighed. She's coming to dinner this Sunday. I was hoping you'd come too. I almost said no. Almost. Sunday dinner felt like stepping back into an old play. Same set, same actors, but the lines didn't land the same anymore. Claire arrived late. No dramatic entrance. No audience. She sat across from me, avoiding eye contact. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. "So," he said, "your uncle tells me you're involved in some big projects." I nodded. "A few." "How big?" he asked. I met his eyes for the first time in years. "Big enough to change things." Claire's fork paused. "And Claire," my mother added quickly, "has a new opportunity coming up. A potential partnership." Claire looked up, startled. "Mom, it's fine," my mother said. "We're just talking." But we weren't just talking. We were renegotiating the family hierarchy in real time. After dinner, Claire followed me outside. "I don't hate you," she said suddenly. "I didn't think you did. She exhaled. "I don't know who I am if I'm not the successful one." I looked at her, not as my sister the star, but as a person who had been fed applause instead of understanding. "You're more than that." "You always were," she swallowed. "Are you?" The question surprised me. "Yes," I said. "Because I had to be." She nodded slowly, like something inside her had finally cracked. As I drove home, the city lights blurred past, and I realized something unsettling. The story wasn't about me being overlooked anymore. It was about what happens when the background noise becomes the signal, and who survives the change. Change doesn't announce itself. It seeps in. The first sign was Claire calling me, not texting, not leaving a voice note, but actually calling. Her voice sounded different, less polished, more real. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You already did," I replied. She exhaled, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "How did you know?" "That you were different." I leaned back in my chair, watching the city below. "I didn't. I just noticed what bored me and what didn't. That's it. That's everything." She went quiet. Then, softly, "I think I chased what people clapped for." I didn't correct her. Over the next few weeks, she started showing up in unexpected ways. Asking questions. Listening instead of performing. For the first time, she wasn't trying to impress, she was trying to understand. It unsettled the family. My father, especially. One evening, he asked to meet me alone. Just coffee. Neutral ground. No witnesses. He stirred his cup longer than necessary. "I failed you," he said finally. The word surprised me more than any apology could have. "I didn't see you," he continued. "I thought being quiet meant you didn't need anything." I looked at him, the man who taught me discipline but not direction. "I needed space," I said. "You gave me that, whether you meant to or not." He nodded, relieved. Gratitude is easier to accept than blame. Around the same time, my uncle's friend reached out again. This time with an offer. Not money, control. A seat. Influence. A chance to move pieces instead of reacting to them. I said yes. Not because I wanted more power, but because someone else would take it if I didn't. The shift was subtle at first. The meetings where people waited for my input. Decisions that carried weight beyond the room. I stayed calm. Anonymous. Effective. Claire noticed. "You're not chasing visibility," she said one night. "You're shaping outcomes." "That's the difference," I replied. Her own career began to wobble. Not because she was failing, but because she was questioning everything. She turned down a promotion that didn't align with her values. People were shocked. She wasn't. At another family gathering, someone asked her what she was doing now. She smiled. Not the old smile. Quieter one. "I'm figuring it out." No applause followed, and she didn't seem to mind. Later that night, as we stood on my balcony, she said, "I used to think being noticed was the same as being important." I looked out over the park, dark and endless. "Most people do." Below us, the city kept moving, unaware, indifferent, alive. The roles were changing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And somewhere in that shift, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't stepping out of the background. I was letting everyone else step into reality. Reality has a way of testing new identities. Claire's transformation wasn't neat or inspiring in the way people like to package change. It was messy, awkward, uncomfortable. She lost friends, work friends who only knew how to talk in wins and upgrades. When she stopped feeding them accomplishments, conversations dried up. She called me one night, voice low. "Is this normal?" "Yes," I said. "You're detoxing from approval." She laughed weakly. "It hurts more than I expected." "It does." Then it stops mattering. At the same time, my name, still mostly unknown, began circulating in rooms my family would never enter. Boardrooms without logos. Apartments without addresses. Conversations where people listen not because they liked you, but because you were right. Power, I learned, doesn't rush. It waits. My uncle watched all of this with quiet fascination. One evening, after a long dinner with people who spoke carefully and drank slowly, he pulled me aside. "You're changing the balance," he said. "You know that, right?" "I'm not trying to. That's why it's working." At home, the family dynamic continued to recalibrate. My mother stopped leading conversations with Claire's updates. My father started asking me questions and actually waiting for the answers. And Claire? She started asking questions of herself. She quit her job. Not dramatically. No exit speech. Just a clean break. The family panicked. "What are you going to do? Are you sure this is wise? Do you know how this looks?" She handled it better than I expected. "I know how it feels," she said. That's enough for now. For the first time, I saw something new in her, courage without an audience. A few weeks later, I invited her to a small gathering at my place. Not family, not friends, people who built things quietly. One of them asked her what she did. She paused, then said, "I'm learning." No apology, no explanation. The man nodded, interested. That's rare. She caught my eye across the room, surprised. Later, she whispered, "That felt different." "It was," I said. "You were honest." That night, after everyone left, we stood by the window again. Same city, different perspective. "Do you ever wish they'd noticed you earlier?" she asked. I thought about it. About the years of silence. The nights no one clapped for. "No," I said. "If they had, I might have needed them." She smiled. A real one. Down below, the city lights flickered like distant applause, constant, meaningless. Above it all, we stood quietly. No longer competing. No longer pretending. Just finally heard. The following months felt like walking through a mirror I didn't know existed. Claire's transformation continued. She started projects she truly cared about, not the ones that earned her accolades. She volunteered for causes that meant something to her, not the ones that looked good on Instagram. Slowly, the family noticed, but differently this time. They were curious, not impressed. I watched it all quietly, not as an observer, but as someone who had always known the rhythm beneath the surface. One evening, my uncle invited both of us to a private dinner at his penthouse. The view overlooked the city, a reminder of the power quietly flowing below the obvious lights. We arrived, and the room hummed with soft conversation, subtle elegance, no attention-seeking. He poured wine slowly. "You two are shifting things," he said. "Not in ways most people will admit they see, but I notice." Claire glanced at me, unsure if she should feel proud or defensive. "I've been thinking," he continued. "Sometimes the one who appears quiet carries the heaviest weight, and sometimes the one everyone praises needs to learn to carry nothing at all." The words hung in the air. Claire's eyes flicked toward me, almost questioning, almost accusing. I didn't speak. Silence felt different now, not invisible, not unnoticed, but heavy with meaning. Later, he left us alone. Claire leaned against the railing, staring at the dark expanse of the park below. I don't know if I like this, she admitted. I feel lost. But for the first time, I feel free. You're supposed to, I said softly. Freedom always feels strange at first. She turned to me, eyes wide, searching. And you? Do you feel free? I smiled faintly. I always did. I just had to wait for everyone else to catch up. That night, walking home through empty streets, we didn't speak much. Words weren't necessary. The city beneath us whispered its usual secrets. Lights reflected in puddles. Steam rose from the subway vents. And for the first time, it felt like we were both part of something larger than family drama, larger than recognition. The change wasn't finished. Not even close. But the rules had shifted subtly and irreversibly. And both of us were awake enough now to see it. By the time we reached my building, Claire stopped and looked up. You're different, she said. Not different, I replied. Invisible is just temporary. Power? It doesn't need applause. She nodded, understanding, finally, something she never had before. And somewhere deep down, I realized the suspense wasn't over. This was just the calm before the next storm. The final act didn't arrive with fanfare. It arrived quietly, deliberately, like the last note of a symphony lingering in the air. It started with an unexpected invitation from an influential investor my uncle had introduced me to months earlier. Not a party, not a boardroom spectacle, just a private meeting in a high-rise office overlooking the city. Claire insisted on coming with me. I need to see this, she said. I need to understand. When we arrived, the room was minimalist, cold light reflecting off polished surfaces. The investor studied us for a long moment. Then he leaned back, fingers steepled. You've been underestimated, he said. That's rare. And powerful. I nodded. I prefer it that way. He smiled. And your sister? Claire glanced at me. I'm learning. Watching. Listening. The investor's gaze shifted between us. Both of you have potential. But one of you understands patience, strategy, invisibility. The other is still discovering the same lessons. Claire's eyes widened. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control of the narrative. That role had shifted. We left the office. The city sprawled beneath us, lights shimmering like stars. Claire was silent for a long stretch. Finally, she spoke. You were right, she admitted. Power isn't applause. It's patience, influence, being seen when it matters. I smiled faintly. It always was. We returned home that night, the penthouse quiet except for the hum of the city below. Claire sat near the window, watching the park. I think I finally get it, she said. You do, I replied. And that's what matters. Weeks passed. Family remained in flux. Conversations about Claire's accomplishments became softer, more curious. They started asking about me, not in surprise but in acknowledgement. She never mentioned feeling overshadowed again. She didn't need to. Both of us understood the unspoken truth. Recognition is fleeting, but impact, quiet, deliberate, unseen, is eternal. The suspense of being overlooked had ended. The storm had passed. The hierarchy of attention had shifted, silently, permanently. And somewhere deep within, I realized the most powerful stories aren't shouted. They are lived quietly in the background until the world finally leans in to listen. The night sky over Central Park stretched endlessly. Lights flickered below like applause we didn't need. And for the first time, both Claire and I were finally free.